Good afternoon, good afternoon, good afternoon. Let me begin by apologizing for our delayed start. We were hoping to have our guests very early this afternoon. They're now on their way, so we can begin and look forward to them. Welcome to We Are the Ones, the post-carnival edition. I know many of us had a really good time for carnival. Of course, you know, after carnival every year, there will be the critics, the criticisms, the skepticisms. There will also be hope for the future and where we want to go with our festival. There are so many good and bad of the season. I think that generally we had a very good season. So I just want to wish all the winners, extend my congratulations to all of the winners, and wish them all my very best and wish them much continued success in the future. To all the other participants who were not winners but played their very critical role for the survival of our festivities, I want to also congratulate you for your role as participants and to look forward to your continued participation. Please don't let the fact that you didn't win dissuade you in any way from participating in our festival. You are key stakeholders. As the name of the program suggests, we are the ones. We are the ones to make the carnival. I think it's a very apt time, more than ever now, to reflect on the words of our theme song for Short Shirt, because it's speaking of carnival and the fact that we're the ones to make everything go. We're the ones that make carnival go. So to the spectators, I hope you were able to enjoy the spectacle of Carnival Tuesday in particular, although it seemed to have been a much shortened version than usual. I mean, we are missing a number of bands. We know Revelers has fallen. I'm still hopeful temporarily. We didn't have Silk Dusk and a few of the others due to various circumstances. It'll be very interesting to know what are the challenges that our mass bands faced, because I think it'll be critical success to ensure that we are able to bring fully back the spectacle of our mass production, in particular for Carnival. I know many persons are raving over the Guadeloupe band. I'll be honest, I didn't see them live because I was not on the road Monday, Tuesday, which is very unusual for me. Monday, Tuesdays are the days that I look forward to. However, I'm one of those persons who chose to vote with my feet as it relates to the music. And of course, I mean, I don't think we need to beat it to death because we know it's an issue that we need to address. But I just want to re-emphasize my concern about the fact that we need more of our music on the roads for Carnival. We have 60 plus years of music, plus each year. In 2018, a number of artists invested heavily in ensuring that there was music. And I'm one of those who, I don't know how many of you can reflect with me. I'll just say this very briefly as we await our guests who should be here shortly. When I was a teenager, early 20s, in the halcyon days of Burning Flames, anyone could remember, almost every year, Flames release, and the first reaction is, oh, that Flames don't sound good tal. Uncle, no disrespect, Onion, Bobai, Fox, you know how it is. We would cuss for the first couple of days. But guess what? The music played every day. It played. It got in our head, it got in our psyche, it got in our system. And by the time you knew it, we were all into the event, into the music. And so the music reigned supreme. Now, the reality is it's a much wider and diverse situation. But the fact remains that persons cannot like what they're not familiar with. They cannot appreciate what they're not familiar with. So this, I've seen a lot of people talking about they need better quality music. I'm sorry. Some of the things that we've been listening to from the other islands, and I'm not disrespecting the other islands, really all the benefit that they've had is very strong airplay, very good, solid, continuous airplay. Every fete you go, you hear them. Everywhere you go, you hear them. You don't hear our music. Our young people, our young artists, and all the artists put a lot of money into developing music for us. For us, it is for us they develop the music because it's of no use to them if we don't enjoy it. And that's the reality. So I think that one of in the postmortem by whomever, one of the things that we must look into is how do we go about packaging what we produce. And this hate that we have for our things, because it's a hate, we dismiss them out of hand. We have to do better as a people. Because you know what's going to end up happening? We keep saying that it's the other person's stuff that is not good, the other one of us. But what's going to happen when it becomes now our turn, that what we produce, that what we do, it may not be carnival, it may be something else that then becomes not good. And my word, I have a message for my DJ friends, many of whom and I are pretty good friends, because they're saying don't blame the DJs. Well, they're DJs. This is my personalized opinion. Since you're convinced that the overseas music makes a better mix and a better quality to play, so that you don't want to play your local artists, why don't we then just bring the foreign DJs to play the foreign mix? We don't need you. The same way you don't think you need the local artists, maybe we don't need you guys. I mean, it's an extreme position to take, but given the pushback that you're getting, because people are saying you all have a responsibility to play what we have. Hold me like a bowl of macaroni. Boil me and everybody remember that song? With some cheese. That was a crappy piece put together by a DJ that was given life. We can list them all out. Chinaman song. I mean, we gave them our life because the DJs gave them life. And because the DJs gave them life, the people began to gravitate towards them. So DJs, you have a role. You become the jam pan of the flames. The jam pan of the flames is now you guys and girls and ladies and women. And we all need to step up and become more responsible for our art, our culture. It's our thing we're destroying, not anybody else's. Think of it that way. When you destroy our artists, you end up by default destroying yourself, because then you will become irrelevant too. Anyways, moving right along. Let's not dwell on that. I think that what we saw for the junior soca in particular sends a lot of hope and good vibes and good visions for the future of our artistry. My concern, though, because I do have a concern in terms of the prizes that we give, is there ways that we can begin to look at making our prizes more meaningful? For example, scholarship opportunities. I'm listening to Kadvisha says that he wants to go and study continue in the field. I think is sound engineering and some other thing related to the whole cultural industries. What's the harm in ensuring that, because he has given of himself into the art form and has assisted so many other writers as the winner, that he gets for a main prize a scholarship opportunity to continue his education in the artistic field? We have Baby Eve, she has transitioned, G Eve, who remains one of our brightest and best stars. She's straddling both calypso and soca. So where's the opportunity for her as a young artist to probably experience a summer at some creative arts workshop dealing in some area that she's interested in? Or even if she's not interested in studying that area, something else. I mean, Calypso Carnival is done and now they're just left to just sit there. They are the best. They represent the best of our creative arts, the best prospects for our creative industries. And I think we can be a little bit more meaningful and tangible in terms of the prizes that we give, a phone or whatever. Let's begin to give them things that can serve them into the long run. Yes, cash is good, but I mean, if we can channel it into ensuring that it maximizes their benefit. Of course, one of my favorite events, PAN, Steel Band competition this year, was awesome. There's still tweaks. I know there's some concern over, especially as a spectator. My primary role was as a spectator, and the first band, Hell's Gate, I hardly heard them because where I was standing, the sound just wasn't coming to me, and I was on the grounds. I transitioned and went up into the stands, and Halcyon was super powerful. So I am still in pain because I didn't hear Hell's Gate. I had to listen to them on the television. And that for me, I wanted that memory of the quality that I would have heard on the grounds. I didn't get that, but what. So I think that there's some work to be done in terms of raising the stage a little higher on the grounds to ensure that we can have a better quality engagement with the spectators. I think we're due that. And so I'm also hopeful in the postmortem that there will be some efforts spared towards revisiting how we position for the C-band competition and how we go forward. I think that will be very, 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 very critical. Calypso competition was, I guess, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'd say about a 7. It was a great show. I am happy for the results. Okay, let me pull up my little bias now. You know, every year when Carnival starts, I make my declaration. Everything going down Point and Villa. No, I'm not a judge or anything like that. But I just express my wish. And my wish is that things will come home. And guess what? The judge's decision ensured that we were able to celebrate, people are shaking their head, celebrate yet again. So I must congratulate my artists from my community who were able yet another year to execute. Now I have very good news. You don't have to hear me alone talking for much longer because my guests are here. And so we're going to take a commercial break and get everything all in order so that we can transition to the main item of discussion. So what you've had is just a little feedback from me as it relates to Carnival. We're going to get into Antigua's future and a discussion, a very pertinent and relevant discussion shortly.
You know I need. And to keep up with my fans on social media, I need lots of.
So double up with iNet Mobile. Activate the talk and data plan and get double minutes.
And double data. That's up to 10 gigabytes of data.
So you can as much as you want.
And as much as you want. So activate a talk and data plan today.
Visit us at www.apuainet.ag or on social media or call 611 for more information. iNet, going beyond expectations.
Fellas, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Ladies, are you ready?
Oh, yeah.
Kids, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Well, if you're ready, Coolers Woods has come on down for a massive buy one, get one free sale. That's right, buy one, get one free on all men's, ladies, and kids, clothing and shoes. Also get 20% off all your appliances. You know when Coolers Woods does a sale, we come really hard. We're already giving you great prices. Now the deal is even sweeter. So visit us on Lower Market Street and take advantage of our latest buy one, get one free sale on all men's, ladies, and kids, clothing and shoes. It's cool and smooth. You know, so we do it.
Broadcasting from the Point community in Antigua, this is Point
All right,
FM,
ladies and gentlemen.
99.1.
Am I hearing myself? I know it's bad to ask that, but okay. So we're back, ladies and gentlemen. And again, let me apologize for a late start. We're still recovering from the season. You know how that is. But I could not miss the opportunity to have, well, one old reprobate. We will know who that is in due course. And two other very good colleagues with me. And they are from ABCRI. Now, we have been hearing about ABCRI for some time. And they have been very vocal across the media houses. But I wanted to give us at Point FM an opportunity to just share with them, get some feedback, because this is just a little taster for a much larger event in their continued series of community engagements. But I just wanted to invite them with us, have a discussion about what ABCRI is, what it represents, what are some of the key pillars of their philosophy, and how it impacts on us as a people. Gentlemen and lady, I'll ask you each to introduce yourself, but welcome to We're the One, just so you know that you're on Point FM, and We Are the One is that program that allows you to go anywhere and everywhere. We basically take any issue and we dissect it and we look at the impact on us as a people. Note, we're the ones, at the end of the day, there's nothing without us. And so I think this discussion will be pretty timely in terms of how we look at how we intersect as Antigua and Barbuda moves forward. So welcome. And who would like to go first?
Ladies.
Welcome home, Bev.
Hi, how are you doing? You're looking fabulous. I didn't see you on the road.
I was on strike, a musical strike.
Okay. My name is Beverly George, and I am the secretary of ABCRI. And I'm from Villa, up the street.
Hence why I told her welcome home. Appreciate it.
And I'm Franz De Freitas. I'm also a member of ABCRI, Antiguans and Barbudans for Constitutional Reform and Education, and I'm from Ovals, born and bred.
Place where we just beat up. All right, and my problems. Hi, Derry.
Hello, Petra. Thank you for having us on Point FM. It's our first appearance. My name is Ralph Bowen, born and bred in Christian Hill and Bethesda, from the Christian Hill village and the community of Christian Hill and Bethesda, Bethesda being the birthplace of education for black people in the English-speaking Caribbean, 21 years before the abolition of slavery in 1834. In 1813, they started a school in Bethesda to educate black people. So, and also, Bethesda is the place where the famous Widdy Widdy Bush speech was given by the Right Honorable Dr. Vere Cornwall Bird Sr., where the people of Antigua and Barbuda stood up to the planter class, and Papa Bird looking around, seeing Widdy Widdy Bush, and looking east towards the beach, east of Bethesda, that is Thomas Bay, and knowing that cockles were in Thomas Bay, was, you know, had a lot of cockles in that area, and that formed the factual background behind the speech. We rather eat Widdy Widdy Bush and cockles than to work for what you want to pay us. So I'm from a community that is ripe with history. We should have had the king, the Calypso monarch, this year, but you know, the judges don't always get it right, but at least their decision is final.
Yes.
Hence your problem, child.
And ladies and gentlemen, a lot of what Mr. Bowen just shared, my old classmate, by the way, so you understand why it's problem. Classmate, church mate, Crusaders mate, oh dear.
Long time.
Too long.
That's when the church accepted Petra.
Oh my God.
No comments. But he gave some very interesting intro. And so I just wanted to advise persons that I think Joy Lawrence had put a book together where she details a lot of the history of Bethesda and Christian Hill, and I'm encouraging persons to grab a copy and grab a read. And that is important, even as we discuss the whole notion of our constitution, because a lot of us as Antiguans like to speak and debate without the benefit of a historical perspective and reference. And so I'm glad Rav raised that, so that I can just encourage persons to begin to delve and dig into the history of us as a people. And on that note, I would like to know who, I think Franz had said what ABCRI, the acronym, is, but I would like for someone to just give us a bit more feedback as to delving into ABCRI. Why ABCRI?
Well, I can start off. ABCRI came together where you had a number of interesting Antiguans and Barbudans in the diaspora at the suggestion of Chuck Walter George. After finding ourselves in the same place, making the same points, advocating for the same issues, there was a suggestion that we meet and have some substantive discussion, particularly at the genesis of the CCJ discussion. And this would have been initially, so we're talking about here 2 years ago. And it evolved from there to look at broader constitutional reform. And when we started to look at and study the Constitution, at least for myself, realized how much I didn't know about the Constitution. And we had some other structural and formative actions that took place around there, but then we started to meet regularly, and we incorporated, and we have a name, and we decided that it should be Antiguans and Barbudans for Constitutional Reform and Education. Principally education first, because you can't reform something that you're not educated about. And so that is where we are now in the process, going through all this education. A thing, by the way, that takes a lot of effort and a lot of time.
Why do you think it's important for us to be aware of what our Constitution says? And permit me to put this in context. Most of us simply accept that every 5 years we vote, and somebody's going to take charge of what happens. And if we get vexed enough, if we're not strongly politically aligned, if we get vexed enough, we just vote for the next party. If we're strongly politically aligned, we either withhold our vote or you try to go in and make some change there. Why? What else is there to politics and governance besides the election cycle?
I think just what you illustrated there is a perfect demonstration of what democracy isn't. People don't understand that democracy requires the citizens to play an active role. The citizens actually have the highest title in the country. That is the position of citizen. The citizen can affect change. It is the persons that are in power that follow the directives of the citizens. I don't think I'm wrong, but the impression that I'm getting in Antigua and in Barbuda is that they have it in the reverse. The politician sets the policy, and if you're strongly politically aligned, you follow the policy. If you're not, then you decide, as long as me and mine are not affected, I don't care. And then we will actually have the nerve to talk about later on, I don't like this, I don't like that. Did you vote? No. Well, you know what? It's like playing the lotto. You can't complain that you didn't win the money if you didn't buy a ticket, invest in the ticket, and play the game. If you didn't do it, then you have no standing to get up and complain. Therefore, it requires that we actively participate. And part of actively participating is understanding the boundaries of rights. What are my rights? Rights are not self-effectuating. You can have rights, and your rights can be abridged, but unless you stand up and say, no, you cannot do that, and I'm prepared to take the necessary actions to make sure you don't do that, then all we have are words on paper.
But I know what my rights are. My rights are that I get to vote. And then when I finish vote, the politician do you have to do, and then I come back and vote. And I'm being, you're right.
Yeah, sure.
Right. The reason why I'm doing it that way is because since I have heard about ABCRI, in fact, ABCRI I read the Constitution long. In fact, I don't think I ever completed it until you guys prompted me. And the prompting to read it was that my son and I ended up in one of those long arguments. And that is what, coming out of hearing one of your discussions, prompted the reading of it. And I was like, oh, okay. But why? Most people would just say, listen, just let me vote and let them do what they have to do.
Well, you see, I like the way you frame it. You know, I guess it's your old church teachings, but I like the way you frame that in terms of voting. Voting is the first and perhaps most important step. Voting is perhaps the first and most important step in terms of creating and perpetuating a democracy. But a democracy without action soon dies, right? One of the ways in which tyranny is created in any democratic society is when you have apathetic people. And that just means that people who do not do what a good citizen demands of them. And that is to remain engaged in the process throughout the entire period of governance of any political party. Now, one of the issues that that seems to plague the Caribbean, not just Antigua, but seems to plague the Caribbean, is exactly what you say. We vote and forget about it, right? So we vote. If our party wins, then our party can do no wrong. If our party loses, the winning party can do no right, okay? Also, we have a situation where it's an all or nothing. So the party that wins, they would cater, and let's just use Antigua as an example. We are perhaps just about a 50-50 break split in terms of support for the major political parties. So we are already a very small population. When one political party wins, they only rely on the knowledge base, intellect, skills, and capacities of their supporters. So they exclude the other half of the country in terms of the meaningful contribution they could make towards solving the various issues we have. The same is true when the other party wins. Then you exclude the other half. So you already start with a very small population. And then after the election, you're only focusing on half of a very small population. So at no time in our history are we ever drawing on all of the resources and capacities and capabilities of all the people within our society. And that means that we are not getting the best that is available. One of the things we need to do in Antigua and Barbuda, and I say this without apology or reservation, is that we need to respect each other's right to choose who we want to represent us. We take politics too personal.
Which planet? Which
Right?
planet you come
Well, you know, I am aspirational in my thinking, right? I do not believe that what is...
By the way, I agree with you, eh?
Yeah, I know you do, right? I don't believe what is necessary means that's what should be. And we should always strive to be the best of ourselves. We should never hesitate to give up the worst of ourselves and even adopt the best of other people. We can look around the Caribbean, look around the world, and adopt best practices. And rather than simply say, well, this is how I'll do in Antigua, right? Maybe it's time for us to do it differently, right? And that's sort of the genesis of APCRI, even in the context of our Constitution. We are 37 years old, and yet still we're wearing the same constitutional pants we did as babies.
Our gift.
Right? Our gift.
My goodness,
or
our gift.
maybe gift, maybe not even a
Maybe
gift,
a gift
rather
of punishment.
Our punishment or command from our former slave masters.
I prefer to think of it as a gift. But, and permit me just one quick question from where I started. In terms of, you mentioned that how our system works now is that to the victor goes the spoils, in essence. And so you equip your supporters to manage the process. But isn't that what our Constitution allows? Does it speak? Is the Constitution definitive in terms of how that goes?
No, absolutely not. You see, I know there are different political structures that people have bantered around, the first past the post or proportional government or all of that. Even within the system that we have, there's nothing that stops our Prime Minister, Gaston Brown, from appointing the most talented person for a particular position, regardless of their political patronage.
No, there is something that stops it. I disagree with you. And I will use some very interesting examples without getting personal. I recall when there was that first change after many, many decades, that there was the, how you call it, on the tent approach, the big tent approach. And two things happened with the big tent that I can recall distinctly as we look at who you choose to support. One, in the attempt to try and use persons who were not necessarily in your camp, there was this inherent distrust. Not necessarily by the politicians who were just like, you just go do what you have to do and just get it done. But all the people around there was this continuous distrust. There was no trust for that person to be able to function effectively. And so the environment within which a politician has to make decisions, because I think, to be fair to many of the politicians, including the current PM and the former one, they would love to try some of what you would mention. But I think the environment that I expect, because I supported you, I am entitled to more than he or she. And so when you ask what stops it, I'm just raising that. And so my question in that context becomes, when we're looking at this whole notion of enshrining things to make it better, because clearly the attitudinal environmental approach will not work. What are we envisioning in things like those?
I think what you discussed is not a constitutional issue.
No, that's what I'm saying. It's not.
That is more of personalities. That is personalities and deciding whether or not we want to do things that are expedient. But we love our country, right? And I would like to believe that love is based on priorities and values. And if your priority is to make sure that we have a country that serves us all, you find a way to make that a priority, and you find a way to get the best of the best to work together. I know it's difficult, because you're talking about generations of being accustomed to, listen, I support you, so I expect. And to a certain extent, you know what, we expect that. However, when you're talking about building your house, are you going to use, and you can afford it, are you going to use the best architect down the road that has the qualification? Or you're going to use your brother Smitty that, he helped you out the other day.
Smitty is a fisherman.
Careful.
No, but I mean,
John, to go and fix your house.
Careful.
I don't think that the house really need a door.
Careful.
What are you going to do,
Let me jump in on that point there too, because Bev, I disagree that it's so easy, right? Mm-hmm. That choice is not clean
I know
like
it's
that.
not easy. If it was easy, would have done it a long time ago.
We come with a big, long history
Yes.
that is counter to that kind of logical, reasonable thinking. We are a people of emotion in Antigua and Barbuda. And
permit me to add something to that. I contend that where politicians could, they would. Mm-hmm. So go ahead.
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree with that idea, but you must understand there's a long history that shows that we continue to beat up and lamblaze and backbite one another because no one has been bold enough to take the action to start the process of reconciling. And again, this constitutional reform thing is a big thing, because if we start here, the ultimate law of the land, and if we understand who are we voting for when we vote, we don't vote for politicians, we vote for representatives. That's how our constitutional tells us, right? So if we go back to the constitution.
Stop. The constitution says we vote for representatives.
Parliamentary representatives.
Okay. But if I am not into my constitution, while I know I am voting for my case, specific case in City West, for my MP, blah 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 blah, I am also looking to know that I'm voting for him to go and do so that I can benefit.
But this is the point that I'm making, because after we have voted, we plug out. So we now abdicate.
We plug out or we get selfish?
Sometimes it's selfish to plug out.
Well, you know what? I if I may just jump in here, because this is a very interesting discussion. The idea is that for too long in our country, we tend to put party above country. And this runs the color gamut of the political divide. We tend not to think country. In fact, I will go as far as saying we tend to remain in perpetual campaign mode. And therefore, there's little time for governance. The only time that I think Antiguans and Barbudans should be so focused about, Labour or UPP or DNA or Go Green or any of the other parties that you may support is when there's an election. after there's an election, as long as the process is fair, the people speak and there is a result. Now, one of the political party forms the government. It then is incumbent on all of us as good citizens. And I see you're making a face, Petra,
No, I'm
because
just smiling.
it's going back to the concept of we need a renaissance in our thinking. We need revolutionary thinking in Antigua to move the needle away from party patronage to patriotism.
I am not disagreeing.
I know you are not, but that's why I'm putting it out there that we need to all, as Antiguans and Barbudans, start to think about our country. Now, if I support, and since I'm in City West, I'll use the Honorable Gaston Brown. If I support the Honorable Gaston Brown,
There's nobody else.
right, it doesn't mean that I cannot say that a particular thing, on a particular issue, I disagree with the Honorable Gaston Brown. Now, you think about it. We chastise our children all the time when they do something that we think is wrong. Some of us use corporal punishment. Some of us use timeout and all the other fancy things that people do these days. Our parents, when they become older, and you know, old people are hard to take care of. You want to tell them now as a child what they should do, or as a son or daughter, what they should do. You shouldn't use so much salt. You shouldn't use so much sugar. Remember the doctor say you have diabetes. And some of us yell at our parents, you know. But when it comes to our politicians, somehow they are above reproach. Now, the fact that I may disagree with the Honorable Gaston Brown on an issue doesn't mean that I do not fundamentally support him as my representative, or on other issues I can support him. But we seem incapable, and this runs the political divide. We seem incapable of disagreeing with the people that we claim to support, and therefore it empowers our representatives in a way that they ought not to be empowered, because it is almost as if you are creating a monarchy. It is almost as if you're creating. So that's why when persons become ministers, you can't speak to them about anything. Now, how can you, as a freshman politician, come into and be the head of a ministry? You have a permanent secretary who has been functioning.
Let's take
Well, yeah, not the head of the ministry.
Right.
You are the policy maker, but you're the minister of health. Just using that as an example.
Right.
Okay? Now, you have never done anything in health, but somehow, by default, if nothing else, you become the minister of health. You have a permanent secretary who has been functioning as the CEO of that ministry for the past 20 years.
Accompanied by
Right?
a group of
Accompanied by a group of technicians and support staff. They have been managing this whole operation. And all of a sudden, you come in and you're the expert without any reliance, because you're called ministers when your job is supposed to be as a policy maker. And in terms of implementation and support that comes from your CEO being your permanent secretary, managing the operations to effect the policies, and perhaps advising you as to what should constitute good policy, because it stands to reason that when you have policy issues, that they ought not just to originate from cabinet and ministers, but they should originate from the technicians who are working, who have the technical capacities and abilities to say, Mr. Minister, we need to do so and so and so because of Zika. We need to do so and so because of solid waste. And then you take that to cabinet to say, well, this is what we need to do in health, rather than the reverse.
Let's go back. Well, let's take it from there and go back. I would like to challenge you that, to a large extent, the technicians are not as bound as you suggesting, in terms of the fact that the ministers do the majority of the directing. Right? I think to a large extent that the technicians actually do drive process. What happens is that in Antigua is that the way how the information then gets filtered to the public may give the presumption that it is originating largely from the minister. That is not to say that there will not be instances where the ministers drive the policy or the implementation plan. But I think it is unfair, especially to the technicians, to suggest what happens, and I think that might be part of the challenge of our constitution, is that our civil servants in particular are forced to operate along a particular path in terms of their public engagement. They cannot engage unless they have certain types of permission and all of that. If it's not constitutionally driven, then it's public service regulations driven. And I think based on what you're saying and the discussion that we're having, that among the things that we may need to be looking at is how do we break that process and make it more engaging between the technicians and John Public.
Well,
permit me a second. That is one. Two, I go back now to, and I wanted to intervene there before I lost it, and I think I made a note of it. When you spoke about the fact that persons cannot challenge the elected, well, it is unlikely that once the politician is elected, let's for example, the member of parliament for City West, that person don't want to challenge him. It becomes almost like a monarchy. That was where the discussion started. Mm-hmm. Right. What I would say about that is that we may not see the desired results at this time. And I'll give you some examples of what I mean. If we look at our political process, we know we're discussing constitution, but let's look at the political process. Leicester got challenged. It took some time. The challenge went a particular way, and we saw change. Spencer got challenged. It took some time. They got changed. Now you're looking at the grassroots doing the challenge. The grassroots does its challenge in some very interesting ways. They simply withdraw their support. If they may not openly say, I don't like this. And if you follow where I'm coming from, you want it to be, and there are instances when the challenge is also made. And I'm not saying it in terms of a defense. What I'm trying to demonstrate is that we may not be making the strides as fast as we would like to see, but it happens. It may not be in sufficient numbers, en masse, as you'd prefer. So, and nor is there a system. For example, I know one of the issues that I've heard discussed, which I would like us to touch on, is this whole potential for including the system of recall in the whole process. If sufficient members of your constituency are not happy, then what happens? But I think that the move to become that check against the politician is more advanced than it probably has ever been in Antigua.
I wouldn't disagree that people have different ways of demonstrating their dislike or disagreement. But the idea that we can not participate as an option shouldn't be on the table for good citizens.
I agree.
Okay? We cannot, again, if we bring this down to the basic level of the family, right? If my child disagrees with the food choice of the house and they consistently don't eat, they're going to end up in the hospital.
Agreed.
And that is going to cause major issues for the household, not only for the child and his health, but it's going to make me not be able to work. It's going to make his mother be upset because I can't work, and a lot of ramifications. So we can't come to the table on the basis, and hence we are looking at constitution and what does a citizen do. This moves us into things like civic education, making people understand that we cannot withdraw from a process because we disagree with it. We have to teach our citizens in Antigua and Barbuda, when you disagree, you engage more. You don't pull back, because what it does then, it leaves a void, and that void has to be filled. And to a point that you made earlier, truth of the matter is, some of the politicians now, because there's a void, they have to behave like how they behave.
Yes.
Right. Or else they're going to end up in a situation where they're going to look bad too, just like all the other citizens who have withdrawn. You're going to have chaos if that happens, right? And so we have to make sure that citizens understand that it is our right constitutionally to be the government. We are the ones who select the people. We're the ones who put them there. We're the ones who tell them what to do when we go. If we outsource that responsibility, then we're going to get a very challenging and difficult situation.
But I just want to add that a democracy is not self-effectuating. Democracy requires a participation. It requires engagement. It requires evolution, right? because the democratic processes, remember, when we were owned as chattel during slavery, the British system, it was a democracy. And they thought that it was okay for them to own people who didn't look like them. And when it was no longer expedient for them to own us because somebody, maybe a moral compass was tickled in one or two
Economics.
people.
Economic.
Let me get to it. A
No
moral
moral.
compass was tickled in one or two persons. However, by being able to frame it in the economics as King Sugar was dying, okay, then now it became expedient to say we can now make ourselves look good by freeing the slaves. But freeing the slaves also, we need to understand, required compensation. Because after all, as a people, what were we? Chattel, property. And government cannot take our property without
Unless
just
they compensate.
compensation,
Yes.
right? Based on eminent domain. So the British citizens or the British government had to compensate the slave owners for us. One of the problems we have is exactly what we've been dancing around and talking about here, is the fact that people withdraw. There is no withdrawal from the system. There's no way. You're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to withdraw your support.
You should not be allowed.
You are not allowed as a good citizens. It is time for us to stand up and take firm positions. I know I'm not going through a communist line. I'm just saying we must learn to be responsible citizens of our country. And in order to be a responsible citizen, you must first know what is expected of you as a citizen of your country. Some of us don't even know what it is to be Antiguan and Barbudan.
So what is it to
Right?
be Antiguan and Barbudan?
To be Antiguan and Barbudan is to recognize that you, as a citizen, occupy the highest office in your country. That the success or demise of your country is your responsibility as much as it is anybody else, no matter what station that other person may hold.
You mean we have to stop blaming the politicians?
We must
My
stop
goodness.
blaming the politicians. Absolutely, we must. Look, that's why I don't talk about who is corrupt and who is not corrupt. Because we tend to have this discussion or every election about who is a corrupt politician, who is not. And guess what? The ones that we claim are so corrupt, they win the elections year after year. Who's voting for them? Right? Who is voting for them? If we know they're corrupt and we're voting for them, doesn't that speak to our corruption rather than theirs? The fact is, politicians will be as good, and this is all over the world.
Okay.
They will be as good or as bad as the people allow them to be. We have allowed our politicians over the years in our democracy to be real bad, to the point now where, again,
When you say bad, what do you mean?
bad in the sense of, and I don't mince words here, right? In the sense that once somebody gets elected, then they become an all-knowing oracle of knowledge.
Stop there. Based on our constitution as it is today, once a person gets elected, short of the next election, what, if any, checks and balances exist?
None. Other than if they fall
So
into
then-
one of the disqualifying provisions of Section 39, which means they become insane, bankrupt, they're convicted of a crime punishable
By more than
imprisonment
12
by
months.
more than 12 months. So they have to fall within one of those disqualifying provisions.
So if, as a citizen, I have voted, and the person that I have voted for does whatever he thinks he needs to do to govern the country, I really have no recourse other than the next time I vote.
And
As it
why we
exists
need-
now.
And that's why we
Right.
need the right to recall.
Constitutional reform.
The right to recall. We need to amend Section, I believe, is 41, right, which speaks to the tenure of representatives.
The right to recall, though, only becomes an issue if sufficient citizens would appreciate the value of such a position.
We propose 2/3 of
Right.
the electorate of the constituency. But I want to just step back a little bit before you deal with recall, right? Because then we're going to end up with a country where every time we're just recalling, okay? I want to step back to the point of personal development at the elementary education level. we have to teach our children, just like we teach them math, English, and reading and so on, we have to teach them what it is to be a good citizen as a child. Because after you pass that phase in your life and you get to secondary school and adulthood, it's almost impossible to get you to go. But that is why we don't wait to teach these things. We start them at infants 1 or grade 1 or whatever the place is now.
When I was younger, we used to actually do something like that in school. And I don't know if they still
Do what?
have this, you know,
Social
teaching
studies?
some part of social studies. And
Yeah, we do social studies, but not the
And-
Constitution.
with regard to understanding CARICOM and how
Oh, yes,
it
we know
all-
CARICOM very
how
well.
it all fits in.
Speaking of man,
Yeah,
Sorry.
but
We know
it-
CARICOM very well.
Petra,
Okay.
I started off in introducing who I was by speaking very proudly of the village and community from which I come. And I asked the question, how many Antiguans and Barbudans do you believe knew that the first school to educate black people in the English-speaking Caribbean was in Bethesda? I submit that if, by the way, that school is now closed, okay?
That's for another day.
That's another issue.
Yes.
But I just wanted people to know it's closed in case they came looking for it.
It's still there, though.
Yeah, but closed. Shut.
Now, by the
If
way,
that school and that historical fact existed in Jamaica, Barbados, Guyana maybe,
St. Kitts.
St. Kitts, the whole world would know. At least the whole region would know. We are a very talented people.
Yep.
The problem with us is that our talent tends to be bottled up and it plateau and it peaks very well below its potential.
But who's responsible for that?
We
It's
are,
our
we
own
are, understand.
responsibility.
And that is why I say
All
I
of
don't
us.
mince words here. The time has come for us to stand up as citizens of this country of Antigua and Barbuda.
Permit me to stick up in there. I'm not letting you stray very far from your point.
You hold on, you forgot what I was
What?
saying.
No, it's all right. You're going to get back to it now. What I want the listeners to appreciate something very clearly, because, again, I note that anytime you guys are having a discussion, it always comes down to some politics and persons trying to figure out what is the political agenda. And what I like about the discussion, and what people don't like about the discussion is they can't call in or text,
Why can't they go?
is that because my program is in the format that we allow the discussion to flow among the panelists. What I want persons to appreciate is that we're having a discussion about nation building and about the fact that, just as the program suggests, where we are the ones that make everything go in the country, at the end of the day, that the highest responsibility, the most critical responsibility, belongs to us as a people.
correct.
And what we give to any leadership, and I say any at any levels,
At any
is
point.
entirely on us.
Correct.
So I just wanted to re-emphasize that point so you can continue.
And what we accept
It's on us
as
well.
good leadership
No, what we accept as any leadership
or any leadership
is us.
is on us.
Right.
And it goes back to what I said. Politicians will be as good or as bad as we allow them to be. The fact is, it goes back to part of what we're trying to do, and friends and Bev may expound on this a bit later in terms of APQUI's mission to get some sort of a proper civics class being taught in school. So by the time a student graduates high school, they should understand what it means to be a citizen, a good citizen of Antigua and Barbuda. They should understand responsibility. Look, an educated people commit less crimes, at least less violent crimes. Unfortunately, some of them commit what they call, I don't know why they call it white collar crime, but some of them think they're too smart and then they get sticky fingers, etc. But that's a different discussion. But if you understand, if you feel a part of the process, if you feel a part of a nation, if you understand your responsibility and your role within the context of nation building, then it is more likely that you will find ways to be a productive member of society rather than trying to rob productive members of society. Right? You would find ways in which you can uplift yourself, and in so doing uplift your community, your families, your communities, and your nation, because it starts at the family level. You can uplift yourself, you uplift your family, you uplift your community, you uplift your nation. And that has no type of political colors that is attached to it. That involves all the colors of the flag: red, black, yellow, white, blue. Okay? And also, it is important for us to understand, and let me just say this up from the outset, especially where I am. ABCRI, because we get
where you are. I don't know. So that's supposed to be
on
where
the
you are.
radio, that is.
Oh, okay.
We get this question a lot. Well, what is the end result? Well, what is the political motive? ABCRI has no partisan political motive. We're not running for anything.
You have no
partisan political motive.
Because
But
everything is political, right?
Absolutely.
Including your home with your
and-
son and the
and-
church and so.
And
Go
by
ahead.
definition, constitutional law is the law of politics. So clearly, if you're dealing with constitution and constitutional law, you are by definition affecting and effecting political discussion. Okay? But we have no horse in the race. We don't care.
No. You don't.
I just want to say that for your listeners, because we get attacked with that. We are not trying to effect regime change. We're trying to create, as you said eloquently before, a system, an environment in which the best ideas, the best plans and programs can move forward. And more importantly, a people can be engaged and feel the responsibility to be and remain engaged in the process, recognizing their importance in nation building.
Let me just tell people where the discussion is going to happen tomorrow. On tomorrow, the 9th of August.
This Thursday thing that I can't make.
You can't make the Thursday.
You can reschedule your other engagement.
Can't.
It is a standing engagement which can be rescheduled.
That I lead.
But you bring all the people that you
Bring
lead,
them there. We
lead
even
them
feed
down
them.
to Perry Bay. We will give them some food
We'll
and
give
some
them-
drink, and then we will nourish their minds.
That's at 6:30 tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen. 6:30 p.m. at the Multipurpose Center at Perry Bay. We're going to start with some light refreshment, little juice, some water, something for you to, if you're coming from your other meeting or you're coming from work.
Hold on. Light refreshment. This is Antigua. Juice, water, and what?
Some food, finger food,
Okay,
you know.
cool.
Yeah.
You know, it is.
Yeah. We understand we're in Antigua and Barbuda.
Bread and cheese.
And we're going to ask you to
Cool.
come, especially people who disagree, right? So that
Disagree with what, do?
with any
You have
position.
people that
Because
disagree with the most, what you would consider not even relevant.
But not-
we want them there as well.
But not only that, is that we don't know everything. No one person know everything. So if you think what we are saying is wrong, come and say what the right thing is. If you think what we're saying is right and you have something to add, come and make an addition. It's the same thing.
Even if you believe
I
the
have some
Constitution is
bones of-
perfect
I
in
have
its
some,
current form.
I have some bones to disagree with you guys on, but that is not the forum for today. You're right. I probably need to come tomorrow.
Yes.
No, why
but-
you can disagree tonight.
No.
It might take too
Today-
long.
No. It hasn't really taken too long. What my objective today is to make sure that the listening audience get an appreciation
Okay.
for what APRI represents, because I think too often there has been this tune out that the conversation begins and people tune out because, them political. And my response would always be, they're political, but not in the way you think. Right? So I have a question as we talk about having the discussion tomorrow. And I don't know if you've been asked this before, but how has it been in terms of the feedback in Antigua in particular from those of us who are regularly domiciled in Antigua to what ABCRI has been putting out?
In terms of the feedback, we've gotten a lot of positive feedback. We've had people come up to us and say, this is long overdue. Thank you. When are you guys coming back? And along that vein, we have a lot of people saying, y'all need to do more. What's next? When y'all gonna, we're like, it's a process, right? You have to start off with education. And then we have a small minority who might disagree with us, which is fine, which is what we want. We want to welcome it, because you know what? Sometimes, even in disagreeing with us, they come with ideas that we didn't even think about. You know, as Fran said, we're not experts, we're students. We're learning just like, you know, everybody else is learning. Let's learn together. Then you have a very small percentage, which I personally don't care for, where, you know, when you lack substance, you start attacking people personally, you know, and that I ignore. The guys can manage that, I ignore, because I really don't have the time to waste with regard to that. There's too much to be done, you know. They'll attack you personally, you're this, you're that, how dare you. But you listen, you're not going to have everyone agree with 100% of what you do. What we just want people to do is to come out, and just like we have the freedom of speech, what a lot of people don't realize is we also have the freedom to think. And that's all we're trying to do, encourage people to think.
See, reasonableness is the
common
ability
sense to be common.
Reasonableness is the ability to disagree without being disagreeable. We need to be more reasonable. Okay? First of all, ABCRE is not made up of them people from New York. All right?
Thank you very much.
ABCRE, I'll say it again.
I'm sorry, forgive my laughter,
That's
but
okay.
that was a good
ABCRE
one.
is not made up of them
No?
people from New York.
So where is made up of?
Me no come from New York.
Where you live?
Okay? Me live in Antigua. Me work in the New York. And I know Fumancha trying to call you now, but
Fumancha can't call you, that's all right.
Yeah, I know, but I know he's trying to call you right now.
He'll
that,
probably
right?
run down here to the station.
But he'll
Yeah,
be
but-
there tomorrow.
but,
He'll be
hopefully.
there tomorrow. He has promised me personally.
Oh, good
picking him
enough. Right.
He,
picking him up?
he's driving.
Okay.
Oh, okay, cool.
Right? So we are not them people from New York. We happen to be Antiguans and Barbudans who live and or work in the diaspora.
Oh, boy.
Okay? Now,
1 second.
let me be
Ladies and gentlemen, do remember that this is not a call-in program. Yes, I see the calls coming in, but it is not a call-in program. Go ahead.
Look, the truth is, if you wish to make your program a call-in program,
No, I don't.
We welcome it because
We
it
don't
is
get.
the
We're not.
engagement with the people.
No,
that
you
makes
get
it
the
more
message out,
significant.
and that will encourage them to come down tomorrow.
Okay, good.
To make those points, make your notes.
Right.
Take them down to the.
And bring them and come.
Yeah. So
With
again,
your copy of the Constitution,
we
of
are
course.
not them people from New York. Okay, Beverly is from Central Street
71 Central Street. Thank you very much.
in Villa. Franz come from Utters. Walter Chuck George is as Villa gets. In fact, Chuck's business in New York is called Villa Star.
I know.
Okay, Villa Star.
I know.
Because Chuck fancies himself as a Villa Star, and that has actually been affirmed by a number of people I have met from
Yeah, he
Villa
is
who
a
say,
Villa star.
yeah, he's brilliant. He was a
Atomic,
brilliant,
blah, blah, blah,
a brilliant sportsman.
In fact, I was going to have him on today, and then I said, no, you guys, tomorrow, this is important.
Yeah,
Hi, Chuck, honey.
Johnny Gums, right, was here during creation. I'm sorry. Johnny Gums, who I think here is from Overs. Right?
Yes. By the way, I'm not from Atas, I'm from Overs.
Overs,
Hood
okay,
Street,
Overs.
to be specific. Yeah.
Vince come from different places depending what day it is, but it's always Antigua and Barbuda. Omaima is from Sweets.
Vince's father is from Point.
Right.
That's
right?
what
But
he tells
that
us.
is why I say
Vince is my family. I
it
know that for sure.
depends on who Vince talking to. He may be from Point,
Of
maybe
of
from
Freetown,
Freetown.
Freetown.
Yeah, I know,
So,
I know.
you know,
but
he's
notice
a
I
comedian.
didn't say Vince is from.
Right.
Say Vince's father.
Right.
My wife is from Freetown. Okay? I was born in Christian Hill. Now, notice I'm just from Christian Hill. But actually born in a Christian Hill.
Okay,
So the
I'll get a
fact
message.
is, we are as Antiguan and Barbudan as Antiguan and Barbudan
Yes,
come.
but you are being accused of having been away for an extended period, not being in the kitchen with those of us who are domiciled here since you raised it, and wanting to come back now and upset the upper card and disturb the Constitution. That no trouble nobody.
Okay, so I want to just jump in here that, and I want to take it back to a very fundamental level, because it seems somewhat hypocritical that people could disagree with others going away to do something. From the history of Antigua, as far as I understand, is that even if you come from country, what used to happen is that if you wanted to improve, say, your socio-economic level, you would take your things and you would come to town, right? Am I historically right there in Antigua and Barbuda?
To teach the town people.
For whatever the reason is. But you used to move to get a better socio-economic position. Even internally. We don't have any change in that here. All is happening now that people have more means, they have more access to a larger world that is quickly becoming one, and people have decided that they can go somewhere else to get better socioeconomic. It doesn't mean that your number one love and concern is not for the family base that you have here. And so the idea that is a bad thing to be exposed is a terrible notion that we should get rid of in Antigua and Barbuda.
I don't think their suggestion is this is a bad thing to be exposed. Even those of us who are here, many of us take the opportunity to do similar things, perhaps not as long, but it certainly is done. I think, and I don't want to dwell on it too long, but I think I just want for you to put on the table your two-line reaction to the notion that them people gooey so long. And let me finish my point. You done ready for to answer me?
You know how much time you have? You've done dig me up a pin for sticking pin, but go ahead.
Them people go away so long and come back now. Because that's the argument. You didn't come back yesterday or the day before. You come back now for one for disturb the peace.
Look, first of all, I think more Antiguans and Barbudans should travel. And not just travel for 2-week vacations or shopping trips to Miami or New York or London, but actually live for a period of time, maybe up to 3 years. You know, like in some countries, you have to do military service. It should probably, we should, well,
you have to be able to afford that.
Be encouraged. Between at least the ages of 18 and 25. Like maybe,
that's going off to university.
Going off to university,
it
yes,
does
it does
count.
count, right? Yeah. I mean, I will forever be an advocate for University of the West Indies. I'm a proud alumni of University of the West Indies, K-Ville in particular. So after you finish with that, you go to graduate school, live a couple of years in another country, a major country, and just living there is an experience. You learn so much, okay? You learn, one of the things you learn most of all is to appreciate where you come from.
Right. Amen.
You understand?
Right.
And that is perhaps one of the things that persons who, as you call them, ordinarily domiciled in Antigua do not recognize, is that by virtue of us not ordinarily domiciled in Antigua and Barbuda,
for extended
periods of time,
right?
We learn to appreciate Antigua and Barbuda even more. I have friends who don't go to the beach until I get here. My best friend Alva would say the beach always down the way tower, the beach down there, we can go tomorrow. But I can't go tomorrow because my plane leave tomorrow. Okay, so we're going today.
Yeah, we always. I always wonder about that.
But the most happiest time in the diaspora, believe it or not, you wouldn't believe, it's not Christmas. You know when it is? Independence. You don't want to see Antiguans get together at Independence. Churches, they always have to book the biggest churches.
The only time I go to church.
And there is no such thing as a political division.
Really, Ralph?
Yes.
There's no such thing as political division. When you see these people come together, oh my
you
God.
Get an eye. Okay, it's less visible.
Yes, that's a better.
Ralph, that's better?
But that's what Ralph is speaking to.
Right.
When you go away, you learn to appreciate what's important. You learn to appreciate the value of home, right? And with regard to being away or whatever, I have always been engaged in something or some other thing in terms of Antigua. And I have been asked, why are you involved? And I always let people know, the reason why I'm able to achieve the things that I've achieved in my life is because I've had a foundation in Antigua. I don't know what's going on now, but I can guarantee you, when I used to go to Villa School, I had the best teachers in Villa School.
To Villa School?
You better believe it.
Okay.
I went to Villa School.
Antigua is Lucinda Payne,
I had Miss Etinoff, Miss Henry, some of the best teachers. When I ended up going to Antigua Girls High School, the best foundation, right? And I can tell you, when I was in Antigua Girls High School, I wouldn't put myself as one of the top students, but certainly I wasn't at the bottom.
Yes, ma'am.
And I went to high school. And when I went to high school in New York, I remember them looking over my transcripts, and they skipped me 3 grades. Why? Because of the foundation I had in Antigua. And so I'm in class, and I'm with these students, and the one thing that I would give the American kids, they're very good at expressing themselves.
Jeez.
They're very opinionated. And, here, I'm sure it's changed significantly, but we were not allowed to interject our own views on issues. All we were supposed to do is read the book and repeat it.
Borrow some of them for me.
But one of the points I would make is we get this. It's not the message; it's the messenger. Okay,
the messenger.
Because it's not the message; it's the messenger.
Okay, fair
right?
enough. Yeah, got you.
Because often in the Caribbean and in Antigua in particular, this is where we are. This is our home, and this is the place we love above all else. It's not what you say; it's who say it, right? Yeah. But I suspect that most of us would rather have the right message from the wrong messenger than the wrong message from the right messenger. Okay?
Which brings me to a question. I'm going to segue from that point. What has been the feedback from politicians
You get a lot of lip service.
in this process?
You get a lot of lip service.
Meaning
when you speak to politicians one-on-one, right? We hear you all are doing a good thing. This is good. I believe in constitutional reform. Particularly now with the CCJ. Are you for or against the CCJ? So you get that one-on-one, but we don't see no bills in Parliament.
But what kind of bills?
Okay, bills in other words.
Because you said you're still in the process, the education process.
Yeah, but
education and discussion process. So out of ABCRI, has there been any specific formulation and says, look, this is a recommended amendment that not only you have tabled with the politicians, that you have circulated widely?
Yes.
I want to even go back. Even before ABCRI was formed.
I miss it.
On both sides of the political divide, it has been proposed to us that the bill would come. As a matter of fact, that is one of the genesis of this whole thing.
What bill though?
So there was a bill to be tabled as it relates to the residency requirements for people living in the diaspora.
You know what's the problem with that one, right? But that is not for today. The problem is that over there, they can tell you guys that. When they come here, we have a different view. We're not going to discuss that now.
But I was just making the point. That in that view, that's a bill that was proposed. Nobody asked nobody about that. They just come and say that.
Because them and look vote.
Right? But this is what I'm saying. You can't have it two ways. You can't come to look vote and then ignore the voter after you get it.
Because when you come back here, the voter down here have a different say.
But that's what I'm saying. So then we have to make a choice as the politician.
We need to have dialogue.
Right? We cannot ask to eat food and then don't deal with that there. So
I suggest or I would submit that the 2010 amendment to the Representation of the People's Act, which expanded the residency period for Commonwealth citizens to 7 years.
7 years, yes.
Was partly came out of the continuous discussions that occurred in the town hall meetings held in the U.S. by the then UPP government.
But then they went back and made it that you could get your citizenship in a shorter period of time.
But that was nonsense.
So then that was to me contradictory.
It may be.
But what did you say?
It's you're talking about the Millennium Naturalization Act,
right?
And you're talking about the Millennium Naturalization Act. Again, look, politicians the world over will always do what is politically expedient.
Yes.
That may not necessarily be in the best interest of the people they represent.
So at the end of the day, the politicians control the politicians.
Hence why it's important to have constitutional education so that we can know what to do in terms of putting
but I disagree. The politicians do not control.
Hence, people need to stop tuning out and tuning in.
Here is the challenge. Here is the challenge that I'm seeing. Okay, so earlier I asked, once the people have voted, what recourse the current constitution provides.
None.
We said none.
Other than agitation.
And then, right. So then it means, therefore, that the education process that we are engaging in now must include critically those who are best positioned to want to make the change. Who would be the ones that are most affected?
You're talking about
I'm talking about the circle, right? So let me go again. Because remember, as voters, we get one say at this.
Every 5 years. Yeah.
No, when we vote, it could be less than 5 years. Whenever we vote, that's our one say. Right, okay. But we are having a general education process, and it's gaining traction in terms of the fact that there are some things about our 37-year-old constitution that needs to be upgraded to bring us into modernized governance systems and political systems. Yeah?
Right.
Good. So my question becomes now, how does ABCRE, besides the lip service that you mentioned, think that a process like this can be heard in the corridors of those, we're talking about the lobby process now, in the corridors of those who have to make the decision, for example, to take it to the people to vote?
I will submit to you that some of the changes, and we have actually come up with changes. We're not a lip service machine, right? We have actually proposed
No, I'm
amendments.
not talking about you being a lip service.
No, I understand.
Made that clear.
But some of the changes that we are proposing, in fact, most of them that we have identified thus far, are changes that empowered the people at the expense of the politicians.
Good.
Okay? So here's the point now. Who do you think has to drive that process? It's not the politician, it's the people.
But the current system only allows me one meaningful, impactful position.
Not at all. Because, you see, politicians are affected by the mobility and mobilization of people on issues. Sometimes we sit back and say, well, I'll make a deal with them at election time. It's not election time to deal with them if you can't get water in your pipes now. Just to use a topical issue. All right? I'm not casting blames on who is responsible.
No problem.
Right? But you are governing now, so it's your responsibility. Whoever is responsible has become an irrelevant discussion. You are governing. It is your responsibility to provide potable water. Right? It's not to deal with you 5 years from now when I done dead from thirst. Right? You understand? I have to deal with you now. So how you deal with it now is to agitate to your representative. Well, what is going on? What is your plan? What is your program? How are you going to resolve this issue? Maybe you should consider this. Force them into town hall meetings to come and explain to you why it is that people can only get water 3 times a week for 4 hours a day.
And
You
they
understand?
are
In
still answerable to the
2018,
people.
when the technology of desalination existed in biblical times. Okay?
So my question right there is, given what you just said about the need for effective lobby, that's the word I'm going to coin it all in. Where are we today in that process?
We have to move beyond. It goes back to what we said earlier, the discussion we were having. The fact that I support.
No. I'm asking you where we are now. I'm going to look to where we need to go in a minute. But today, as ABCRE, you this would be how many town hall meetings you've had now?
The 15, I think this is our 5th one in Antigua.
Okay, so we're at 5 town hall meetings, plus you've had numerous media appearances.
Right.
Do you think that we are gaining sufficient traction on a broad scale?
Yes. I believe that.
And how do you measure that?
I measure that by listening to talk radio, including Point FM. All right? People are talking about, and sometimes they may not understand whether or not it is a constitutional issue, but they want to know what the Constitution says about that, if anything. Okay? People have called us and asked us, well, what the Constitution say about this? When it has nothing to do with the Constitution, maybe a piece of legislation that actually deals with that. People are now thinking Constitution. And that's what you want. You want people to become curious about the Constitution, and then hopefully out of the discussion force them to read it. And when they don't understand it, have a discussion with the neighbor who may have read it as well. And by so doing, understand it, because that's how we understand it.
And I want to just make a point here that so that the listening audience, the public understand, these are not ABCRI issues, right? We don't want people to think that ABCRI is going to advocate as a lobbyist on behalf of the people. What we want people to understand is ABCRI wants us all collectively as the citizenry to affect the change. ABCRI doesn't have a plan to do anything on behalf of people. All we're doing is spurring, facilitating people's understanding. ABCRI cannot make any change alone by itself to change the Constitution.
But ABCRI can lead the process.
We can be the catalyst. The catalyst. Yes.
We create the enabling environment, right, where we can have persons understand the Constitution, understand the implication for the provisions as they exist, and then through robust discussion, disagreement, arguments, etc., come up with an improved version. Maybe what is the best thing for now. And as Beverly would say, we perhaps need a constitutional convention every 20 years, because what obtains now may not actually apply 20 years from now as the world changes. You see, so ABCRI we as members of ABCRI, and everybody who participates in our process is a member of ABCRI. We just have a board, a functioning managing board, but everyone who participates in the process, they are members of ABCRI. We have our own opinions that may have individually. We have collective opinions that have been created on account of the discussion we have amongst ourselves, as well as with at our town hall meetings, where we learn so much from the people who attend, when we have learned so much, right? And we have put those ideas that have come out of the town hall meetings into suggestions for change in terms of the sections that we have already dealt with. But let us be clear. In order to amend the Constitution of Antigua and Barbuda, you have to go to Section 47.5. And that provides that you have to get an originating bill, right, which must have a 2/3, a supermajority in both houses of Parliament. Now, you have two sets
We have that now.
Well,
correct.
Oh yes, and we had it in 2004 as well, so that we don't exclude blame from anybody.
Fair enough. Okay.
Right? So we had it then and we have it now. Now, the Constitution has what we would call entrenched and non-entrenched provisions. So the non-entrenched provisions tend to be provisions that are not as fundamental to your democracy, in the sense that it's not going to shake up and overturn the thing. You understand? Like an entrenched provision is CCJ. Because now that is a fundamental thing where you're replacing your apex court, right? Your top court, from the or trying to, from the Privy Council to the Caribbean Court of Justice. So that requires the 2/3 majority in both houses of Parliament, and then the second step of a referendum of 2/3 majority of the registered voters. The non-entrenched provision, like Section 30 and 39 that we were talking about, allowing civil servants, for example, to participate in political life without having to surrender their
tenure in the civil
service. All right, those things are non-entrenched provision, and I think if you were to ask the average Antiguan and Barbudan whether or not they think that a teacher should be allowed to run for elected office or serve in the Senate without having to give up her years of service in the civil service. Because if we look at the law, how she may run and lose. And then what? She have no job because she wants to serve her community, being mindful that she was already serving
Stick a pin.
her community.
I hear you on the teacher. Let's suppose that the financial secretary wants to run
Yeah.
on the opposing party to the governing party, whichever. I'm not picking any sides. So he would be armed with lots of information, right? That he would wish to, that he could use on behalf of the party that he's running for. Would that be in the best interest of
Our
everybody?
democracy?
The
No, I'm
democracy
asking.
or
Of our
No,
democracy?
because for example, remember as the financial secretary, you are chief advisor to the government.
Correct.
Okay.
To
Financial-
the
On
min- to the
financial
finance,
matters.
on
Yeah.
financial matters.
Right.
Good. So I am chief advisor to you, and I've been telling you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this.
Right.
I am still in the system,
Okay.
and election approaches, and I decide, listen, I go run on the other side. How does the system allow for any keeping of the secrets of the national governance while you go?
I have a couple. I have a
I'm just
I have,
asking.
I have a
I'm
couple
just
of
asking.
Some
questions.
things there. You're
Yeah. Just
talking
asking.
about what is his fiduciary duty to? Is it to the political person or to the country? Right? What is that's the problem here.
No. Let me hold on. As the system stands, and I'm going to
Right.
use myself as an example.
Okay.
I was a statistician in the government system for a number of years. I had to sign an oath of secrecy.
Correct.
Okay.
The oath of secrecy did not expire when I was no longer a statistician. The oath of secrecy lasted for, I think it was 15 years. It expired just the other day. I had a good laugh.
Let
It
me
expired-
ask you a
Hold on,
question.
wait. Let me finish my point. The reason why I'm asking this is because I think when we're discussing this whole notion of change, and I'm not against change, I try to balance the change
With the reality of
with
what
the
you're
fact
dealing with.
that it's a very small society, whether we'd like to admit it or not. It's a very small pool, and when we begin to commingle, we could potentially do more harm than good to our democracy. I don't know if that's something
Have
that's
there been
worth-
evenance of that? That's number one.
It never
Number
happened.
two,
It was never allowed to happen.
so we
Well,
don't
it
know.
can't because the Constitution don't allow it to, right? But what
Right.
I'm saying
and
is,
there probably was a reason why.
no,
No.
but what I'm saying is that
I'm
we
asking, I don't
we
know.
as politicians should run on issues and ideas, and in Antigua, we tend
Not in Antigua, in politics in general.
no, but I'm
throughout the
speaking to
world.
Antigua and
Remember, we're
Barbuda.
aspirational.
No, the reason why I say that, because remember, when we're going to be having discussions about making changes, the environment becomes key. And until we are able to process change in the environment, we will be lobbying and agitating in a particular type of environment.
So let me give you a very simple answer to the question you asked, utilizing the financial secretary. Okay. The financial secretary is a civil servant. He's not appointed by the... Is he appointed by the Prime Minister?
I don't remember.
I don't-
No.
Okay.
No. But
He's a civil servant.
But he has to be approved by.
Okay, all
Right.
right. So he's a civil servant. The government in our Westminster system is the people.
Go ahead.
So if your oath is to the government, your oath is to the people and
Go
the
ahead.
country. That is your oath. Secondly, you actually made the point as clear as possible as to why we need to do away with this very archaic and ineffective exclusion that we have in the excluding civil servants. We are a small society.
Agree.
And we are a small society where perhaps somewhere between 45 to 50% of the adult working population will fall under the definition of civil servant as provided for in Section 10 of the Civil Service Act.
Agreed.
Now, let us be clear again. The Constitution doesn't say that civil servants are disqualified.
Agreed.
The Constitution says, and I want to read it because these things are important, right? The Constitution under Section 39 says, 39(1)G, right? It says persons who are disqualified. And just, I know we running short of time. Persons who
15
are
minutes,
disqualified.
right.
Persons who hold or is acting in any public office or in the office of Judge of the Supreme Court or ombudsman, or is a member of the constituency's boundaries commission, the Judicial and Legal Services Commission, the Public Service Commission, or the Police Service Commission. Now, it's very important that we look at this laundry list, okay? All of the other provisions in here are constitutionally created sections or offices. Public Service Commission, Constituency and Boundaries Commission, etc. What happened in our beautiful, beloved Antigua and Barbuda is that in 1985, the Civil Service Act was passed. Remember, we became an independent country in 1981,
right.
November 1st. I don't remember exactly when in 85, but the Civil Service Act, I believe, was passed in 1985. And someone can correct me, but I believe it is Section 10 of the Civil Service Act that defines all civil servants as public officers. The term civil servant is not used in the Constitution as an exclusionary office that prevents you from serving in cabinet. In Parliament, whether in the lower or upper house.
Okay.
It is the Civil Service Act that then defines civil servants as public officers. Now, you're telling me, and by the way, let me finish. Because
what was the environment that caused that?
Well,
and has the environment changed?
But listen. Absolutely. Because I think the environment that existed then that would have generated such a draconian transformation or transformative legislation to say that the janitor in the Ministry of Health can't run for political office because somehow he can destabilize the country because he is a janitor.
Then is there scope to narrow the pool?
The fact is we ought not to be narrowing the pool of the persons that were... Listen, my dear Petra, let the voters decide. If the voters believe, it's the same issue with persons who hold dual citizenship.
I am talking about before we get to the vote. I am saying that I'm suggesting that depending on the level that you hold in the service, how you approach something like, for example, a campaigning season, how you approach getting the party to which you decide to align yourself ready for an election could potentially, note my choice of words, negatively impact on the way forward for the country.
So you put a system in place. Once you are declared on nomination day, all right, you may have to take a leave of absence.
And what about the knowledge that you have?
But this is what I'm saying. You have to separate.
Hold on.
I'm talking about no. I'm talking about your awareness.
Yes.
Of
there's some things
systems
that are private, okay,
but
to the operation of the government. Exactly.
You have a fiduciary duty.
So let me give you an example then. Let me be specific.
Okay.
We shouldn't get too heated on this, but let me give you specific. I'm going back to me. I'm going back to myself as a statistician.
We're passionate.
Passionate. Thank you for correcting me. I'm going back to myself as a statistician. In Antigua, the work of the statistics division is very challenging because the general public is not confident that when they give information to the statistics division that the politicians don't get it.
I wonder where you got that from.
Hold on. No, that's always been. Now, I was a statistician for 9 years. In many instances, I was the only statistician looking at those information. And this is going to sound funny. In the 9 years, I told somebody they didn't believe me. No politicians ever asked me for any individual company information. Because they know by law they couldn't ask me. And they never asked me. But that didn't stop private sector people from telling me that when I get the information, I go and give politician X or politician Y. Very quickly, I'll make the point. Imagine I now go into active politics. I'm going straight from a statistician into politics. And you know how our political system, remember, we're not talking about the ideal where we are heading to. We're talking about what happens to us while we walk our way to this ideal. And Petra now becomes a candidate under hustling. And politician X over there, sanctimonious, whatever. And I know, based on what information I would have gleaned over the years, that so, even if I don't say it myself, do you think that all of us would be able to manfully resist giving that information to some of my colleagues on the campaign trail for Lash,
But what is
which could potentially undermine, further undermine the system of data collection and processing in Antigua and Barbuda. I'm using it as an example.
So I use you as an example.
No, I'm
what is
using
the
it as an example.
What is the penalty for you breaching your oath of secrecy?
Was it 3 years?
3 years in what?
And $500.
In what?
If they prove it,
Yeah.
in jail.
Okay.
Okay.
So maybe that is what would dissuade you from sharing the
And
information.
and
The
500
3 year-
and $500.
Yeah, maybe that need to come up to
No, but here's
50,000.
what. But
right?
no, the point
But-
I'm making is, Ralph, is that first you're gonna have to prove it's me.
But there you
Because
go.
I could quietly give it to friends.
But-
Friends and I in the same party.
Petra,
But
Follow
these
me.
things are
Petra,
very easily
Petra,
traceable, you know.
Petra, Petra.
The
Only
point-
you alone
But that
know.
does not
Pe-
preclude us
Hold
from
on.
changing
Petra.
the
No.
system.
The point of that example. I'm not saying follow. I'm not saying we're not going to change the system. I'm just using it as an example.
Real
A
example.
real life practical example to demonstrate
Yes.
why some people could very well push back against a move to say make that amendment.
And let me give you
Not
a-
agreeing on.
but-
I'm
but-
just using it as an
I
example.
want to use your example. If you, Petra Williams, right,
8 minutes.
you operate in that
questions.
space, okay, with that information. If you are a supporter of Go Green, what if you were going to leak it to Go Green as a supporter
But it
of Go
happens.
Green? No, but what I'm saying,
And there are no penalties.
No, but hold on.
It happens in Antigua today, and there are no penalties.
Peter, what I'm saying is,
Enforce, that is.
if you have a legislative framework to enforce your violation of your secrecy,
But
oath,
there is.
and it's not enforced, then who do you blame?
So my
the
point
fact
is-
it doesn't become more
it's not
heightened
the
or
law.
dangerous if you become a candidate.
It
Because
does.
if you are going to leak it, you're going to leak it. You can leak it without being a candidate. You can leak it just because you
Agreed.
passionately support a
Supporter,
particular
which,
party.
which has happened.
But,
the point,
but what information do you have that I could not discover on the Freedom of Information Act request?
the challenge that we have now, which is another story, is that I don't think the Freedom of Information Act works, which is something that we probably
Which
need to
means
address.
Isn't that really
okay.
sad?
Okay.
It doesn't work.
Okay.
It doesn't
It's
work.
very
You see?
sad.
But we
That's a
have
different
I
story.
want- I
we have 8 minutes.
I want to go back to the central point
Mm-hmm.
which you made, which is the crux of why we need to get rid of this section.
By the way, I don't
Right?
disagree. You know,
I know,
I am just
I
showing you
know.
some of the things that would pop up.
That's important.
Listen,
Understood.
all ideas are contending here. There's no, what's right or wrong is a matter for the country to decide as a whole, because we're going to need either 2/3 of the politicians to decide it, and then 2/3 of the people. Or we're going to, in this case, we don't need the people to do it by referendum, but we need them to force the politicians, and it has to be important to them. No matter how important it is to us, it has to be important to them. And here's why. You remember the example I gave with when one party is in power, 50% of the country, the ideas, the intellect, the skills and talents are excluded. It's the same situation here. What we're doing with these disqualifying provisions is that we're narrowing the talent pool from which we can choose who are going to be our representatives.
And do you think
right?
that those who are in positions to influence this would be unhappy with?
We are not being served, because if you're telling me somebody is qualified to be the CEO of the Ministry of Health, you're telling me they're not qualified to be the Minister of Health if they've been the CEO of Health for the past 25 years?
No, what the Constitution is telling you that since you have done that, don't cross the line.
And that's
But-
a bad
but
idea.
That is a bad idea, because again, recognize that
And I
we're
deliberately said that so you can say what you said, so that the public gets a view of where we're heading.
recognize where this came. We got a template from Britain. All right. I suspect that I don't know what the population of Britain is, but it's plenty more than Antigua.
It's more than
Barbuda.
Antigua.
Okay, that's the first point. Secondly, I suspect that perhaps the civil service of Britain comprise less than 10% of the working
10?
population.
10 is a higher
Okay, you're the
number.
statistician. Less than 6. So
I think
even
maybe
if
even less
they
than
had that provision, and I don't know that they do have it, but let's assume that they had it, right? You're only excluding 6% of 300 or maybe 200 million.
Right.
How much ever people? 6% of 200 million people are excluded, or whatever the representative working population would be of the 200 million. Here in Antigua and Barbuda,
It's
we have 100,000 people.
Where you get so much people?
But you know
carry
about
on.
plenty Jamaicans and Ghanaians.
It's okay, but even still.
Okay.
But
So we have 100 or whatever. Okay, you're the statistician. How much ever we have. If it's less than 100,000, it's even worse. Because you have 50% of the adult working population who are now just automatically excluded. Now, people would say, just as with the dual citizenship, well, why you not just resign and run? Resign and run?
You're giving up.
Huh?
You're giving
Resign
up.
and
Yes,
run.
you're giving up a lot.
I have been a teacher for 25 years.
You're giving up a lot. Answer.
You think a lot? A
You're
lot.
giving up a
That
lot.
is being
You're
trivial
giving
to
up
say
all.
You're giving
You're
up
life.
everything, all of your
life.
equities.
All right.
Right?
Can we pause on that?
The fact is we need to get rid of it. Find a way to make it work. Find a way
I
collectively
will say
to
this,
make
that
it
we
work.
need to seriously look at it, as you guys have begun to do. But then also look at all of the implications. And so when we finally, quickly move forward, that we would have considered many of the potential ramifications.
Let me give you a quick suggestion that came out of ABCRI. The person resigns for their position, right? Not resigns, but rather take a leave of absence. All right?
If they win,
If they win, then
The year's transition to-
exactly. All right, the year's transition to
or they get paid out.
if that is the option that they choose. If they lose, then they go back into the service. They may not, for example, if you're the CEO or
If I was the financial
you
secretary,
may
you
not
ain't
get
going
back
back there.
as financial
Right.
secretary, but you are not going to lose your seniority and your whatever your.
But then I
equities
may
that
not
you've
have any
already
other
built.
work for you to do.
You find something.
No days work.
You
I'm
can't tell
asking-
me you can't find work for an experienced financial secretary to do. You even if the person is functioning.
But
more
the
in a
FS
consultation.
functions
We will
about
talk.
the same
We
as
will
the
talk.
PS.
We will talk. No, the FS functions higher than the PS. We will talk about that another time. But here's what now. Two very quick questions. You spoke earlier of the need for a structured system of civics to be taught in the schools and so on. And while we wait on it to be taken on at a national level, is there anything that ABRI can offer? Let's say a school wants to have some discussions with their students. Members of ABCRI available? Is there a small module that can be utilized, something like that schools could? Because I know schools also like to gravitate to those kind of things. Are those kind of things available?
So currently we have developed an outline and we have broken it down into lower primary, upper primary, lower secondary, upper secondary, and we have the outlines for the primary piece. Where these are the topics. What we are busy doing now is filling in the content for the topics. We are even asking people for assistance because it's a lot of work. But if you needed some guidance as to what could be presented, we can share with you the outline that we have for the lower and upper primary divisions
And
as it
we
relates
would
to civics.
quickly request that if there's anybody who have these skills, this is all volunteer work for ABCRI, and we don't necessarily have all the skill sets within ABCRI to implement some of these things. Fans, Dr. Lightfoot and I believe Dr. Omayam David have been working on this. They're all very busy people, but you have persons who are specifically trained in curriculum development, etc., who might be able, with some guidance, assist us in fast tracking this process.
And
So
even
we
yourself,
welcome that.
And
Petra.
how do they make
If you are willing to contribute, we are open.
Take Francis' number.
No, I'm wondering
you
what
can
to give the
join us
public.
on Facebook.
On
or,
Facebook, the
friends-
Facebook.
Oh, Facebook.
Like us
Yeah,
on
contact us on
Facebook.
Facebook.
All right,
Yes.
okay.
And
All right.
Messenger us on
And my
Facebook.
last question, as we are on the, and I want to thank you guys. Let me thank you now before, in case we followed after the question. I'm kidding. But seriously, it's been a very useful discussion. I want to,
And we hope we can come back to talk some more.
Well, I'm sure. I know a number of persons have been sending me messages about an open line. So I'm sure Mr. O'Neill, who has the day program with an open line, will be glad to. But everybody knows that We Are the Ones is not an open line program.
Right,
So
okay.
right, it's more magazine format.
Okay.
And I would like to ABCRI's feedback. ABCRI as well as individually. We have like no time, but we're gonna steal some time on the CCJ. On whether we should acquiesce to the CCJ.
Specifically, what is it that you want to know?
I want to know how ABCRI feels about as their final appellant and the whole notion that we will shortly be asked again as a people to vote.
Well, I can speak personally about how I feel about it. I believe that we should acquiesce to the CCJ. That is my personal feeling.
And let me just say specifically for ABCRI as a whole, we're made up of individuals. So people have differing views inside of ABCRI as to
We're wrapping up.
What should happen as it relates to the CCJ. And so
what's your view?
So my view is that we're not ready for the CCJ now. I believe that it's a good aspiration
You're
start.
talking too long. Beverly can talk. You can't talk too long. Ralph?
I absolutely believe 100% that we should go towards the CCJ. I think the time has come for us to own our freedom. I think the time has come for us to cut the umbilical cord from Britain. I think the time has come for us to have more faith in ourselves as a people, that we can actually have effective and efficient and fair-minded self-governance in all aspects of our determination. So I believe
and become a
in
true sovereign country.
CCJ. Let us decide. I don't need no white people in England deciding what the laws of Antigua and Barbuda should be.
So then my question is, why can't we, just as ABCRI has positions on various things, why can't we have a ABCRI position on CCJ?
Because, as Fran said, we are...
But you have positions on things like residency.
We are not...
There are a number of things that we have ABCRI position. This is important. This is an important and
ABCRI's
critical
position,
matter.
if we were to poll the members, I believe the last time we polled that ABCRI was in support of the CCJ.
Collectively.
So just bring friends over.
No, but you see, but we also believe in democracy, freedom of
choice.
thought and
I
choice.
understand that,
right?
but I would also...
But what will happen naturally, Peter, is when the majority of people have a position, it prevails when you take the vote. And so, just like in the referendum, when it happens, when we have a majority of the people, I will have to come, whether it be reluctantly or voluntarily.
So that means we'll get the vote. Thank you.
But
on that note, thank you very much. I really have to... It has been a most interesting discussion. I want to thank you very much.
Thank
you
you
have
for
convinced me
inviting
that I need to grab my Kiwanis Club of St. John.
Yes, bring them.
I guess we're going.
Bring them.
If you have what you call
President has spoken.
Bible study or whatever, you can have your Bible study tomorrow with us. You can have your praise and worship with us. Whatever it is you're gonna have. You can bring
Ladies
your alcohol
and
and drink
gentlemen,
it after.
I don't
Come
have
to the meeting
I
tomorrow.
can't find my
it is
closing
important
song
for us to be
because
all there.
Jupiter has
Thank you
left
for having
me.
us.
But I want to thank my panel for being here. It's been a most fascinating conversation. I'm hopeful that we will get to see their return at least one at a time. My program, another program. And ladies and gentlemen, I just want to close by just saying, we are the ones. We are the ones who matter. We are the ones at the center of the decision-making process. And even if we are being skeptical, I think it is important for us to embrace this whole notion that we take a look at our Constitution, even if it's just that we know what it says. So let us not knock it out of hand. Our family, they're our family. However we define them, they are still our family. Many of us know them from many ways. Well, I mean, all of them except I don't really want to Ralph number, but you know what I mean. And so, ladies and gentlemen, on that note, I just want to thank you for being with us. I look forward to your feedback. You know how to get in touch with me as usual. And we're the ones, over and out. Thank you very much.
Just expect 30% more. They does that? Yeah. But you know what, Petra, I'll tell you, right? Because this...
Broadcasting from the Point community in Antigua, this is Point FM 99.1.
Why at this time now, they terrorizing the island with mortgage interest rates way up so high, and the price of land, Lord, way out of the reach. Poor man cannot buy. They limit our children's secondary education, so our teenagers got to migrate. And by the time they graduate, they ain't coming back because they can't get a work in Montserrat. Lord, rejected in their own homeland. So let's wage war on them wicked system that is designed to keep this island down. Let's wage war on them terrorist act. Practice like that, keep Montserrat back. They're terrorizing we with high prices, small salaries, and heavy taxes. And every time we try we best to get to the top, they always put in front of us their stumbling block. So let's wage war, Lord, Lord. Let's wage war, oh God. Look at the way how they treating civil servants with nothing good in place on which to rely, and the job evaluation, Lord, was a waste of time. Another white collar crime. They refuse to pay we full pension. So we are in a sad state, and before we die in this place, do something about that, because we catching hell here in Montserrat, Lord. We catching hell in we own homeland. So let's wage war on them wicked system that is designed to keep this island down. Let's wage war on them terrorist act. Practice like that, keep Montserrat back. They're terrorizing we with high prices, small salaries, and heavy taxes. And every time we try we best to get to the top, they always put in front of us